Take off that medal before speaking to this court. The judge's voice echoed through the room. Sharp, cold, final. The old man standing at the witness stand didn't move. His hands trembled slightly. He wore a faded blue blazer, and on his chest, right above his heart, gleamed a silver star with a pale blue ribbon. People in the courtroom shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their eyes, others smirked. But he didn't speak. He simply looked at the judge, not with defiance, but with decades of weight behind his silence. Then someone stood up. From the very back of the courtroom, a man in full military dress uniform, chest heavy with ribbons, eyes like steel, raised his hand and said only 5 words. Permission to speak, Your Honor. What happened next ended the judge's career and reminded an entire nation what honor truly means. The courthouse in Springfield was built in 1947, right after the war. It had thick stone walls, high ceilings, and an air of authority that was supposed to make people feel small. Judge Harold Whitmore had presided there for 17 years. He was known for running a tight courtroom. No nonsense, no theatrics, no exceptions. He believed in order, in rules, in the idea that the law was the law, and nothing, not emotion, not history, not sympathy, should ever cloud that. The case that morning was routine, a property dispute between 2 neighbors over a fence line. It should have been settled in mediation, but both parties were stubborn. So here they were, in front of Judge Whitmore, wasting the court's time. The plaintiff's lawyer had called his first witness, an elderly man named Joseph Emory. Joseph was 81 years old. He lived next door to the plaintiff and had been asked to testify about the property boundary, which had existed long before either current owner had moved in. Joseph walked slowly to the witness stand, his gait stiff, his posture upright despite his age. He wore a simple blue blazer that had seen better days, gray slacks, and a white shirt with no tie. But what caught everyone's attention was a medal pinned to his chest. It wasn't large, it wasn't flashy, but anyone who knew anything about military decorations would recognize it immediately. The Medal of Honor, the highest military decoration awarded for valor in combat. Only 3,500 had been awarded in the entire history of the United States. And one of them was sitting in this courtroom, pinned to the chest of a man who just wanted to testify about the fence. Joseph sat down, adjusted the microphone, and waited. The plaintiff's attorney, a man named Gerald Harris, began his questions. Standard stuff: name, address. How long have you lived there? Joseph answered in a quiet, steady voice. No elaboration, just facts. The attorney moved on to questions about the fence, about the property line, about what he remembered from 20 years ago when the boundary was first marked. That's when Judge Whitmore interrupted. He leaned forward, looking over his glasses at Joseph. His voice was sharp. Before you continue, remove that medal. This is a courtroom, not a military parade. The room went silent, the kind of silence that has weight. Joseph looked up at the judge, his expression unchanged. He didn't move. Whitmore's face hardened. Did you hear me, sir? Remove the medal, or you will not be permitted to speak. Joseph's hand moved slowly to his chest. His fingers touched the ribbon. For a moment, it looked like he was going to unpin it. But then he hesitated. His eyes distant, and in that moment, he wasn't in the courtroom anymore. He was in a jungle. He was 22 years old. His uniform was soaked with sweat and blood, not all of it his own. The radio was screaming. The LZ was hot. 3 men were down. The helicopter couldn't land. And Joseph had made a choice. He'd gone back, through the fire, through the screams. He'd carried 2 men on his shoulders, dragging a third by his vest. He'd taken shrapnel to his side. A bullet grazed his neck. But he got them out, all 3. The medal wasn't for show. It was a reminder of the weight he carried, of the man who didn't come home. The memory faded. He was back in the courtroom. His hand dropped from the medal. He looked at the judge and said quietly, "No, sir, I won't." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Whitmore's face turned red. "Excuse me?" Joseph's voice was still calm. "I said no, Your Honor. This medal was given to me by the President of the United States for actions in combat. I wear it to honor the man who died beside me. I will not remove it." Whitmore slammed his gavel. You are in contempt of this court. The bailiff will escort you out. 2 bailiffs stepped forward, but they hesitated. They were both veterans. One had served in Iraq, the other in Afghanistan. They knew what that medal meant. They knew what removing it would mean. But they had orders. They moved toward Joseph. That's when the voice came from the back. Permission to speak, Your Honor. Every head turned. Standing at the back of the courtroom was a man in full army dress uniform. He was in his mid-50s, broad-shouldered, with a chest covered in ribbons. Among them, unmistakably, was the Distinguished Service Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor. His nameplate read Colonel Raymond Mitchell. He stood at attention, his gaze locked on the judge. Whitmore was flustered. This is highly irregular. Who are you? Colonel Raymond Mitchell, United States Army, retired. I request permission to address the court regarding the witness. Whitmore's mouth opened and closed. He wasn't used to being challenged, and certainly not by a full colonel in uniform. He glanced at the courtroom, now packed with people who had stopped pretending to care about the fence dispute. They were watching, recording on their phones. This was no longer a quiet property case. This was something else. Fine, Whitmore said tightly. Make it brief. Colonel Mitchell walked down the center aisle, his boots echoing on the tile floor. He stopped in front of the bench, standing at attention. Your Honor, with all due respect, you have just ordered a Medal of Honor recipient to remove his decoration in the court of law. I feel compelled to inform you of what that means. Whitmore's jaw tightened. I am well aware of military decorations, Colonel. This is a civilian court, and, with respect, sir, you are not aware. Mitchell's voice was calm, but carried the weight of command. That medal represents the highest form of valor recognized by this nation. It was awarded to Sergeant Joseph Emory for actions on November 14th, 1968, in the Ashau Valley, Vietnam. He saved the lives of 3 wounded soldiers under heavy enemy fire, sustaining multiple wounds himself. 2 of those men went on to have families. One became a teacher, another a police officer. They lived because of him. The courtroom was silent now. Every eye was on the colonel. Mitchell continued. By federal law, Title 36 of the United States Code, Medal of Honor recipients are entitled to wear their decoration at any time, in any place, including courts of law. Your order, Your Honor, is not only disrespectful, it is illegal. Whitmore's face had gone from red to pale. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Mitchell wasn't finished. Furthermore, Your Honor, 17 states have passed laws protecting the rights of Medal of Honor recipients. This state is one of them. By ordering Mr. Emory to remove his medal, you have violated both federal and state statute. And you have done so in front of a room full of witnesses. The whispers grew louder. Phones were out now, recording openly. Whitmore realized, too late, that he had made a catastrophic mistake. He tried to recover. I was simply maintaining decorum in my courtroom. Decorum? Mitchell's voice rose slightly. Sir, that man bled for this country. He carried the dead and the dying on his back. He has earned the right to wear that medal anywhere he chooses, including here. Your courtroom does not outrank his sacrifice. The words landed like a physical blow. Whitmore gripped his gavel, knuckles white. Then another voice spoke. From the middle of the courtroom, Mr. Emory saved my father's life. A man in his 50s stood, his voice shaking with emotion. My father was one of the men he carried out. I wouldn't exist without him. Another person stood, and another. Within seconds, half the courtroom was on its feet. Some were veterans, some were children of veterans, some were simply citizens who understood what they were witnessing. A reckoning. Judge Whitmore sat frozen, the gavel still in his hand. He looked at Joseph, who hadn't moved from the witness stand. The old man's expression was unchanged. No triumph, no anger. Just a quiet, patient dignity that made Whitmore feel very small. The judge cleared his throat. This court would take a 15-minute recess. He stood quickly and disappeared into his chambers, his robe billowing behind him. The courtroom erupted. People surrounded Joseph, shaking his hand, thanking him. Colonel Mitchell stood beside him, a silent guardian. The bailiffs who had been ordered to remove him now stood at attention, offering their own quiet salutes. The plaintiff's attorney, Gerald Harris, approached. Mr. Emory, I apologize. I had no idea this would happen. Joseph simply nodded. It's not your fault, son. In his chambers, Judge Harold Whitmore sat at his desk, head in his hands. His clerk, a young woman named Rebecca, stood by the door. She'd worked for him for 3 years and had never seen him like this. Judge, he didn't look up. I just ended my career, didn't I? Rebecca hesitated. The video is already online, sir. It's everywhere. Whitmore let out a long, shaky breath. He spent 17 years building his reputation, and he destroyed it in less than 5 minutes. All because he'd seen a medal and thought it was theater, thought it was showboating. He hadn't asked, hadn't considered, hadn't shown an ounce of respect. There was a knock on the door. Rebecca opened it. Colonel Mitchell stood there, still in uniform. He'd like to speak with you, sir. Whitmore wanted to refuse, wanted to hide, but he nodded. The colonel entered, and Rebecca closed the door behind him. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Whitmore broke the silence. I made a mistake. Yes, sir, you did. Mitchell's voice wasn't angry. It was just factual. Whitmore looked up, his eyes red. I didn't know. That's the problem, Colonel Mitchell said, sitting down across from him. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You saw something you didn't understand, and instead of showing respect, you demanded compliance. That man out there has given more to this country than you or I ever will. And you treated him like a prop. Whitmore's hands trembled. What do I do? Mitchell leaned back. You apologize. Publicly. You acknowledge your mistake. And then you accept whatever consequences come. Whitmore nodded slowly. And if I don't, then your legacy will be the judge who disrespected a Medal of Honor recipient. Mitchell stood. The choice is yours, sir. But make it quickly. The world is watching. 30 minutes later, the courtroom reconvened. It was even more packed now. News crews had arrived, cameras lined the back wall. Judge Whitmore entered, and the room fell silent. He sat, adjusted his microphone, and for a long moment, just looked at Joseph Emory. Then he spoke. Mr. Emory, I owe you an apology. A profound and public apology. His voice was steady, but his hands gripped the bench. What I said to you earlier was wrong. It was disrespectful, ignorant, and beneath the dignity of this court. You earned the right to wear that medal through sacrifice I cannot begin to comprehend, and instead of honoring that, I disrespected it. I am deeply sorry. The room was silent. Joseph looked at the judge, and after a moment, he nodded. Apology accepted, Your Honor. Whitmore's eyes glistened. Thank you. He paused. I am also announcing my resignation from this bench, effective immediately. I have violated the trust of this court and of the people it serves. It is time for me to step down. Gasps filled the courtroom. Whitmore banged the gavel one last time. This court is adjourned. He stood and walked out. Not through his private door, but through the main aisle, past Joseph, past the colonel, past everyone watching. His head was high, but his career was over. And he knew it. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Colonel Mitchell gave a brief statement, defending Joseph's right to wear his medal and calling for greater respect for veterans in all settings. Joseph declined to comment. He just wanted to go home. But before he left, a young reporter, barely out of college, approached him nervously. Mr. Emory, how do you feel about what happened today? Joseph thought for a moment. Then he said quietly, I just wanted to testify about offense. That's all. The video of Judge Whitmore's order went viral within hours. By the next morning, it had been viewed over 10 million times. Legal analysts debated. Veteran organizations issued statements. Calls for accountability flooded the state judicial board. Within a week, Whitmore had formally resigned, citing personal reasons. The real reason was clear to everyone. He'd crossed a line, and there was no coming back. Joseph Emory returned to his quiet life. He testified in the rescheduled hearing under a different judge, who thanked him for his service before he even sat down. The fence dispute was settled. Life went on. But something had changed. People recognized him now, thanked him, asked to shake his hand, and every time he was gracious. But in his eyes, there was always that distant look. The look of a man who had been to places most people couldn't imagine, who had done things most people couldn't comprehend, who wore a medal not for glory, but for the ghosts who never came home. Colonel Mitchell visited him a month later. They sat on Joseph's porch, drinking coffee in silence. Finally, Mitchell spoke. "You didn't have to defend me back there." Joseph looked at him. "Yes, I did. Because if I didn't, who would?" Mitchell smiled. "You're a good man, Joe." Joseph shrugged. "I just did what was right. Isn't that what we all should do?" They sat in silence again, two soldiers from different wars, bound by the same code. Respect, honor, duty, words that meant something, words that couldn't be taken off like a medal. In a small office in Washington, D.C., a legislative aide drafted a memo. It proposed a new training requirement for all state judges, mandatory education on military honors and veteran rights. It would be called the Emory Protocol. It would pass unanimously, and every judge in America would learn the name Joseph Emory and the lesson he'd taught. That respect isn't given by a gavel. It's earned by blood, sweat, and sacrifice. And once earned, it can never be taken away. Not by a judge, not by anyone. Judge Harold Whitmore never practiced law again. He moved to a small town, worked at a library, and lived quietly. Some said he was bitter. Others said he'd learned. But on Veterans Day, every year, he would visit the local VA hospital. He never spoke about what happened, never sought forgiveness publicly, but in his own way, he tried to make amends. One day at a time, one veteran at a time. Because some mistakes can't be undone, they can only be learned from. And in the end, that's all any of us can do. Learn, grow, and never forget that honor, once disrespected, demands a reckoning. And that reckoning doesn't always come from the powerful. Sometimes it comes from a quiet old man in a blue blazer, wearing a medal he wished he'd never had to earn. Retried Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.